He knows the song, or he knows Bengali. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Jayan Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad, the Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavin ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Jai. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On this 23rd day of April, 2024, in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in Chapter 7, Knowledge of the Absolute. Text number 2 on page 305. Jnanam te aham savijnanam idam bhakshyami asheshataha yagyatva neha bhuyo anyaj gyatavyam avashishyate. Jnanam tehang savijnanam idam bhakshyam yasheshataha yagyatva neha bhuyonyaj gyatavyam avashishyate. Jnanam tehang savijnanam idam bhakshyam yasheshataha yagyatva neha bhuyonyaj gyatavyam avashishyate. Jnanam tehang savijnanam idam bhakshyam yasheshataha yagyatva neha bhuyonyaj gyatavyam avashishyate. Dharmaraj. Jnanam teham savijnanam idam bhakshyam yasheshataha yagyatva neha bhuyonyaj gyatavyam avashishyate. Jnanam teham savijnanam idam bhakshyam yasheshataha yagyatva neha bhuyonyaj gyatavyam avashishyate. Jnanam teham savijnanam idam bhakshyam yasheshataha yagyatva neha bhuyonyaj gyatavyam avashishyate. Any ladies want to try? Go ahead. Jnanam teham savijnanam idam bhakshyam yasheshataha. No, the second word is gyatva. Yagyatva, yeah. Yagyatva neha bhuyonyaj gyatavyam avashishyate. Tapas.
Jnanam teham savijnanam
Jnanam teham savijnanam
idam bhakshyam asheshata
idam bhakshyam yasheshataha
gyatva neha bhuyonyaj
yagyatva neha bhuyonyaj
gyatavyam avashishyate.
gyatavyam avashishyate. Okay, I'll read the synonyms, just read along. Jnanam, phenomenal knowledge. Te, unto you. Aham, I. Sa, with. Vijnanam, numinous knowledge. Idam, this. Bhakshyami, shall explain. Asheshataha, in full. Yat, which. Gyatva, knowing. Na, not iha, in this world. Bhuyaha, further. Anyat, anything more. Gyatavyam, knowable. Avashishyate, remains. I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. All right, so I'm going to read the previous translation because he's saying this knowledge and he's referring back to verse 1. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Now hear, O son of Prita, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt." So this is basic bhakti yoga he's describing here, and he will proceed to describe it in this chapter. Purport to text 2. Complete knowledge includes knowledge of the phenomenal world, the spirit behind it, and the source of both of them. This is transcendental knowledge. The Lord wants to explain the above-mentioned system of knowledge because Arjuna is Krishna's confidential devotee and friend. In the beginning of the 4th chapter, this explanation was given by the Lord, and it is again confirmed here. Complete knowledge can be achieved only by the devotee of the Lord in disciplic succession directly from the Lord. Therefore, one should be intelligent enough to know the source of all knowledge, who is the cause of all causes, and the only object for meditation in all types of yoga practice. When the cause of all causes becomes known, then everything knowable becomes known, and nothing remains unknown. The Vedas, Mundaka Upanishad 113, say, "Kasmin nu bhagavo vigyate sarvamidam vigyatam bhavatiti," which means what he just said. When the cause of all causes becomes known, and everything knowable becomes known, and nothing remains unknown. Om jnana timirandasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshur unmilitam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. So let's take stock here of where we've come in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna has described different kinds of yoga in the previous chapters. In chapters 3 and 4, he described karma yoga. Karma yoga means, and all of these really, there are aspects of them are integrated into bhakti yoga. But karma yoga has to do with activity. Karma means activity, basically. And yoga means linking. So it means linking your activities to Krishna. And it mostly requires what we call sacrifice. Sacrifice means you have a certain activity you perform, and while you're performing it, you're thinking, "Oh, Krishna will enjoy the percentage of the fruits of this. You know, I have to have something to keep body and soul together. But whatever is feasible, I will give as a sacrifice for Krishna." And in this way, we don't cultivate attachment to things that will please our senses and nourish what we call the false ego. It's very important to understand what the false ego is. The word for ego means ahankara. In Sanskrit, the word is ahankara, which basically means I'm the doer, and by implication, I'm also the enjoyer of what I do. You see, and it revolves around the false understanding or misunderstanding, I should say, that we are this body. That if I want to know who I am, well, first thing I do, I'll look in the mirror, you know, and say, okay, I have such a height, I'm such an age, I speak a certain language, born in a certain place. All of these pertain to the body. I like to give the example of, like, if you're driving and you go through a stop sign or something. I had that experience maybe a year ago. It wasn't a stop sign, it was a red light. It was the most amazing thing. I'll just tell this because okay. I'm sitting there at, I think it was Lamont and Grand. It's a big intersection down here. And I pulled up, and there was a cop car right next to me, and it registered me. Okay, you know. But somehow, they had put in these bike lanes, you know. So it was a little confusing. And I'm in the right lane, and I want to go straight. I don't want to make a right turn. And the light turned, but it turned for the left turners, so I still had a red light. But I saw them starting to move, and I also went right through the red light. And the cop said, "Oh boy, the cop's car is right there, you know." So of course I pulled over, and they pulled up behind me. And it was interesting, because one guy comes around and says, "Okay, license and registration," which I gave him, you know. Then he went around the back, I think, to check my license plate and see if I had any outstanding tickets or anything, you know. I had nothing for years and years. I hardly drive anymore. But the other guy came around the right, and he asked me, "What are you guys all about anyway?" Because I was dressed like this. And a nice conversation, you know. Then the first guy came out after finding absolutely nothing on my record for like 100 years. And instead of giving me a ticket, which is kind of a miracle, he gave me a little sheet that was a warning. don't do it again. In other words, because your record is clean, you get like this, So I drove off. I said, boy, that was lucky, But the point is that they asked for the license registration, and what's on the license? There's a picture of you. They have your date of birth, right? And I think they have the address and something. In other words, it's a brief identification of you, so that they can say, oh yeah, you're the guy who's supposed to drive, can drive the car because it matches with the registration, whatever. So this is called ahankar. This is called false identification. It's the philosophy goes like this in a nutshell: that all of us are pure spiritual beings, and we don't take birth and we don't die. We're eternal. Prabhupada constantly quote this verse from the 2nd chapter of this book. There's a lesson on the soul that begins the whole Bhagavad Gita, starting in text 11 and going to 30. If you count them, there's 20 verses there just describing the soul. Because Arjuna, he is, I don't want to say he's freaked out, but when he asked Krishna to take the chariot, Krishna takes the role of his chariot driver. And just think of his God who takes the role, a menial role of like a cab driver or something, So this is what he does with his devotees. So let's take my chariot between the two armies so I can see who's on the other side and who I have to fight in this war. So who does he see on the other side? All kinds of friends and relatives, primarily his beloved grandfather figure. The history is that the 5 Pandava brothers, who were all exalted birth, their father died untimely. And so their mother, took to raising the kids. They're, 10, 11, like that, or younger. And so this other figure, Bhishma Dev, he came in and he played the role of like a grandfather and helped to raise them. So and he's a great devotee. So he's on the other side. It's a long story how he got on the other side, but he's on the other side. Another one on the other side is Arjuna's teacher of military arts, So he didn't want to kill them. That's they're on the other side. And then he kept looking, and there's all kinds of other brothers-in-law and cousins, In other words, there's a lot of attachment there that he has. And suddenly he says, how can I fight this war? Even if I win the battle and we win the kingdom, it'll be soaked with the blood of the people I love. What kind of a victory is that? So he basically wants to walk off and become a beggar. But Krishna says, no, you can't do that. That's you have this great reputation as a fighter, and like that. So they're going back and forth, and finally Arjuna just sits down on the chariot, which is the last thing you want to do when the battle is about to go. He sits on the chariot and he drops his bow. He says, Govinda, I shall not fight. I cannot fight. So the whole structure of the Bhagavad Gita is geared toward getting Arjuna to fight. But in the process of doing that, Krishna lays out this eternal philosophy of the soul, of God, the relationship, what is this world. There's like something called Sambandha Gyan, which is the first initial thing. This whole 2 verses here about knowledge, right? Jnana and Vigyan. Jnana is knowledge that, ordinary knowledge. We know the population of San Diego. We know something about the chemical makeup of the atmosphere and so many different things like that. But Vijnana has to do with hidden knowledge that is revealed to us. In other words, who am I? What is matter? What is spirit? Who is God? How did this world come about? What's the relationship? Who is the ultimate cause of this world? Naturally, every society, well, that's God, But how does it happen? How does the creation take place? So all of that is, of course, this is a summary Krishna is going to give, but he's going to give the essence of those things, and he's saying, I'm going to give you, and the translation is interesting, phenomenal and numinous. It used to say phenomenal and numinal, but numinal is not the right word. I work as an editor. That was one. I didn't make that correction. Prabhupada said numinous. Basically, it means material and spiritual. Material and spiritual. We need to know both of those things. And if we know those things perfectly, then nothing further shall remain to know. We'll know who's the source of everything, how this world came about, who we are, what our relationship is, and how to act in that relationship for our ultimate benefit. That's what the Bhagavad Gita teaches. And the basic subject matter, all these other forms of yoga, they ultimately are part of Bhakti Yoga. There's an element of karma yoga in Bhakti Yoga, because we work hard and we try to give as much as possible for Krishna's service. And that way we don't remain attached to things in this world. That attachment will bring us back again for another birth. The basic principle in Vedic culture is we're spirit, not matter. We've been through a lot of different kinds of bodies, and we come to the human form. Now this human form has to be utilized. It's very rare. And only in the human form can we understand this knowledge and not simply act on instinct or on the pushings of the senses, but rather act for our ultimate benefit, which has to do with withdrawing, as he spent in the last chapter, withdrawing the senses from this sense gratification and engaging them in the service of the Lord. It's feasible. The process he described in the last chapter, which is this classic meditative yoga, starting with restraint of the senses, then sitting in a certain way, asana, and then withdrawing, and pranayama. You know, if you go to yoga studio, they still practice pranayama, right? I used to practice it. It's very relaxing, very nice, healthy. And then, after you're sitting properly with the asana and then pranayama, pratyahara, withdrawing the senses from the sense objects, and then dharana, concentration on the objects of the senses, on the object of meditation, which in the classic yoga process, as outlined in the previous chapter, is the Lord in the heart. Krishna is also in our heart, as called the super soul. There's two souls in every body, ourselves and the super soul. So God is with us all the time. And He's trying to give us good advice, but we can't hear Him inside. We're too covered. So He comes outside as the Bhagavad Gita and also as the preceptor, the guru, and teachers who are giving us the shastric or scriptural knowledge straight without any material motive. So in that way, if we are receptive to this knowledge, we can become more and more in tune with what Krishna wants us to do, which is to come back to Him. You see, there's a very personal aspect to this. Everything in Krishna consciousness is ultimately personal. Why would Krishna, who's perfectly happy enjoying in the spiritual world there, he doesn't need to come here. Why would He take the trouble to come down here, speak the Bhagavad Gita, get involved in this big war and all of these different things? Because we're also His children. We're exiled. We're suffering here. We don't know why. So He comes to give us good instruction. He explains in the 4th chapter why He comes. Yada yada hi dharmasya glani bhavati bharata abhyutanam adharmasya tadatmanam sujamyaham. Whenever and wherever there is disruption or distortion of dharma, dharma is a very important concept, and adharma is ruling in the world, at that time I come in order to protect the devotees, padatanai sadhunam, and destroy the miscreants, the demons who are atheistic, anti-war, and anti-devotee. We're in a very interesting part of the Srimad Bhagavatam class. Every morning at 7:50 till about 8:30 or 8:35, we have a class on a much larger book, which is kind of the foundational book of the whole movement, of the whole Krishna consciousness, and it's called Srimad Bhagavatam. And there's this wonderful boy saint who learned everything about yoga in the womb. Prahlad, his name. And he is so learned, even as a child. As soon as he can speak, he's preaching to his father, who's a big demon, but there's a backstory where the demon, he finally gets cured of his demon and he goes back to Godhead. There's a big story about him. But he's, Hiranyakashipu, he's always looking for gold and soft bedding, and the bed companion. And so he's the father. And Prahlad is already knowledgeable and pure devotee. He's instructed by Narada Muni, who's a great saint, demigod. He always travels and he always gives bhakti wherever he goes. He knows just how to preach. He converts a hunter, another little boy, Dhruva, and for Prahlad, he just, taught him in the womb. So he comes out and he's a great devotee. He's one of the 12 main devotees who carry this knowledge. They're called the Mahajans. So anyway, it's amazing. He's a little delicate little child, but he's fearless before his huge father. His father asks him, "What did you learn? You know, my beloved son." He doesn't know because he was instructed in the womb. "What did you learn today?" Hoping that he learned some Machiavellian techniques, you know, in other words, raised up as a good demon. Says, "Oh, I'll tell you his father. Tatsadu manye sadabhyadehinam sadasamudvigna diyama sadgrahat hitvatma patam griyamanda kupam panam gato yadharamashayeta." He says, he doesn't call him father, he says, "You're the best of the demons." The asura. The sura means saintly, and asura means just the opposite. So this is best of the asuras. Asurya varya. Best for whom? Best for the embodied soul, means best for everybody. Sadasam, who are always, especially in this age, always disturbed. Mind is always disturbed because it's a very dangerous world, and we've lost our contact with our great protector, Krishna. We've forgotten. So there's all these dangers, and there's all these, you know, death is always waiting. So it's a disturbing world. Krishna says, "Dukkaliyam shashvatam," in the 8th chapter. It is full of misery and it's temporary. You know, even if you get some secure position, you know it's going to end eventually, right? Just by the force of time. So people are not happy. So Sadasama, so he says that this is everyone, Father. You know, they're disturbed. So the best thing is to give up attachment in material family life. He describes it as classic as a blind well. You know, here we don't have blind wells, but in a rural society, they have dig wells to get water, but eventually it goes dry. And so you go dig another well. What happens to the old well? It gets overgrown with grass. So classically, you know, mostly animals fall in there and, you know, you can't survive. Or a human being also. So if you get involved in completely materialistic family life or any kind of life, then that's a prison for you, because your mind is always disturbed. You're always considering how I can make it better, or how I can, you know, get away. In other words, you're trapped. So he says, "Give it up, Father." And what should I do? Go to the forest. What forest? Vrindavan. And take shelter of Hari, Krishna. The last thing he wanted to hear. Because the demons are enemies, sworn enemies of God, of Krishna. Plus, Krishna, in a pastime form, believe it or not, he appeared in the form of a boar, and it's a long story, he saved the earth which had fallen into a big ocean. But he also fought with his brother, Hiranyaksha. Hiranyaksha means always looking for gold. And his brother's called Hiranyakashipu, always wanting gold and soft bedding. So quite a pair. So Hiranyaksha was killed. So now Hiranyakashipu, his arch enemy, is God, you see. Hari. So that's the last one. So how did my son learn this? Where did he learn this from? You know, he had no idea. So it's all going. Now we're in the chapter, and we're in the part of the chapter where Nrsingadev is going to come out of the pillar. You've heard of the Nrsingadev? He's going to come out, and he's going to tear Hiranyakashipu apart. Very exciting. So anyway, back to our current verse. So Krishna is going to get, in the last chapter, he spoke about this dhyana yoga, karma yoga, jnana yoga, yoga of knowledge, speculation, and yoga of meditation. But none of those are really suitable for Arjuna. Arjuna was saying, I can't practice this. You know, go alone to the forest and sit in a certain way and sit up straight and practice pranayama. He's a kshatriya, he's a warrior, an action man, you know. And he said, like, controlling the mind, like you described, is like trying to control the blowing wind, the hurricane, you know. Like, I can't do it. So Krishna, first he says, you can do it with practice. And so Arjuna says, yeah, but what if I fail? Oh, then you be born in a family of yogis or something in the next life, you know. So Arjuna is pretty much discouraged. He doesn't think he can do it. So at the end of the chapter, Krishna, he resolves the whole thing. Basically, he says, don't worry. The best of yogis is one who's always thinking of me within the heart and worshiping me with great and transcendental faith, you know. So Arjuna says, oh, that's me already. I'm always thinking of Krishna. He's my best friend, you know. So that was very assuring. But now comes chapter 7. Now Prabhupada has said in several places in the Bhagavad Gita that the middle 6 chapters are the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, because we still have to become yogis. So how do we get absorbed in thinking of the absolute truth, transcending the bodily concept of life, if we don't have this sitting process? So Krishna is going to teach us that now. And he's going to begin by some very important knowledge, as he says here, jnanam, about what this world is made up of. What is going on here? What are the constituents? Where do they come from? How do they relate? How do they relate to me? And how do they relate to Krishna? How do they relate to me as a soul? And how do they relate to Krishna? So as the Prabhupada says, real knowledge means knowledge of the phenomenal world, the spirit behind it, and the source of both of them. That's real knowledge. Matter and spirit and the controller of both, Prabhupada says in elsewhere. So that's what we're going to learn now, what this world is made of, how it's related to Krishna, and what we can do with that knowledge, how knowing that knowledge is going to help us in our practice of bhakti yoga. So if there's no questions, we'll move on. Now he's going to say how rare it is. So we're very fortunate if we take this process up. Text 3. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatam abhisiddhanam kaschin mam veti tattvataha. Out of many thousands of men and women, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. Purport. There are various grades of men. When Prabhupada says men, he means human beings. There are various grades of men, and out of many thousands, one may be sufficiently interested in transcendental realization to try to know what is the self, what is the body, and what is the absolute truth. Generally, mankind is simply engaged in the animal propensities, namely eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, and hardly anyone is interested in transcendental knowledge. The first 6 chapters of the Gita are meant for those who are interested in transcendental knowledge, in understanding the self, the super self, and the process of realization by jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, and discrimination of the self from matter. However, Krishna can be known only by persons who are in Krishna consciousness. Other transcendentalists may achieve impersonal Brahman realization, but this is easier than understanding Krishna. Krishna is the Supreme Person, but at the same time, he is beyond the knowledge of Brahman and Paramatma. Paramatma means the Super Soul I mentioned earlier. The yogis and jnanis are confused in their attempts to understand Krishna. Although the greatest of the impersonalists, Sripad Shankaracharya, has admitted in his Gita commentary that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his followers do not accept Krishna as such, for it is very difficult to know Krishna even though one has transcendental realization of the impersonal Brahman. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, the primeval Lord Govinda. And this is a line from Brahma Samhita. Ishwarak Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. It is very difficult for the non-devotees to know him. Although non-devotees declare that the path of bhakti or devotional service is very easy, they cannot practice it. If the path of bhakti is so easy, as the non-devotee class of men proclaim, then why do they take up the difficult path? Actually, the path of bhakti is not easy. The so-called path of bhakti practiced by the unauthorized persons without knowledge of bhakti may be easy, but when it is practiced factually according to the rules and regulations, the speculative scholars and philosophers fall away from the path. Srila Rupa Goswami writes in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.101, Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidhin Vina Aikantiki Hare Bhakti Utpataya Vikalpate. Devotional service of the Lord that ignores the authorized Vedic literatures like the Upanishads, Puranas, and Narada Pancharatra is simply an unnecessary disturbance in society. It is not possible for the Brahman-realized impersonalist or the Paramatma-realized yogi to understand Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the son of Mother Yashoda or the charioteer of Arjuna. Even the great demigods are sometimes confused about Krishna. Muyanti yatsuraya. Mam tu Veda nakashchana. No one knows me as I am, the Lord says, and if one does know him, then samahatmasu durlabha. Such a great soul is very rare. Therefore, unless one practices devotional service to the Lord, one cannot know Krishna as he is, tattvataha, even though one is a great scholar or philosopher. Only the pure devotees can know something of the inconceivable transcendental qualities in Krishna. his being the cause of all causes, his omnipotence and opulence, and his wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. Because Krishna is benevolently inclined to his devotees. He is the last word in Brahman realization, and the devotees alone can realize him as he is. Therefore it is said, Atakshi Krishna namadi nabave grayam indriyai sevan mukhe hiji vadao swayameva sporatyadaha. No one can understand Krishna as he is by the blunt material senses, but he reveals himself to the devotees, being pleased with them for their transcendental loving service unto him. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1-2-234. So, there's a lot of content in here. The first thing is the rarity of even trying for perfection. And then it's even rarer for someone to succeed. Because, especially in this age, this is the Kali Yuga. In the Vedic understanding, there's like seasonal ages. And the first is called the Satya Yuga. And it's the age of truth. Or an age where practically everyone is in the mode of goodness, and they naturally practice meditation, and they live for a lot longer than we do. I think that's up to 100,000 years, which is practically inconceivable. But gradually, due to the force of time, the mode of passion becomes a little more prominent in the next yuga. So in the Satya Yuga, the means of realization of God was this meditative yoga that we read about in the last one. Valmiki, we just had the appearance day of Lord Ram. Some of you may know about that. And the Lord Ram, the Ramayana was written by Valmiki, who started out as a thief and a criminal. But I forget who instructed him. Was it Vyasadeva himself? But anyway, he was instructed to just chant the name of Ram, you know. But his background is a criminal. Says, okay, don't chant Ram, chant Mara, which means death. And so he said, okay, Mara, 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 Ram, Ram, Ram. If you start chanting Mara, you're going to chant Ram very quickly. So how long did he chant? Who remembers? 60,000 years. 60,000 years. And then he realized, revelation, he wrote the Ramayana. So we're not going to live 60,000 years. If we live to be 100, that's a long time, right? So we need a process that works very quickly and is very powerful. And so after the Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavad Gita was spoken in the last yuga, at the end of the Dwapara Yuga, which is the last yuga. And basically Krishna says, everything will be fine if you surrender to me. And then that's how you can know me. In the last chapter, the very important verse, how to know God, You can't do it by speculation, by force, because he's so vast and unknowable and mysterious, right? So you have to depend on him revealing himself to you. And that means that he has to be pleased with you. And that's where bhakti comes in. So Krishna says in the 18th chapter, near the end, Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yaschasmi tattvataha. There's that word tattvataha again, which appeared in this verse, in truth. Not some speculative conclusion, but the actual truth revealed. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yaschasmi tato mam tattado gyatva avashateta anantaram. That by the process of bhakti I can be known, because it's a process of revelation. Prabhupada gives the example, if you want to, go and see the president, not the president of the United States, say the president of Canada, you can't just say, who are you? Oh, this is my name and address, but we don't know you. You can write a letter to him, but you can't see him. But if you become friends with the president somehow, then he'll be happy to see you. Oh yeah, I remember him from my school days. Sure, come on in. So that's the idea, is that Krishna, he reserves the right. He can keep himself secret to you, just like he's hidden from us now, because we're not bhaktas yet. But we have a little bit of interest, and we're presenting, and so he agrees to come and appear as the deity, as the holy name. This is the philosophy, that in the absolute truth, when it comes to the absolute person like that, pure spirit, source of everything directly related to Krishna is Krishna. Prabhupada had, was very eager to get these paintings done, and so you can see that the devotees really worked hard. They became very nice, and he saw every painting. He called them windows on the spiritual world. He would look at these paintings, and he would actually see Lord Chaitanya, on Sankirtan. You see Ram in the forest. The vision is different, you see. Someone else walks in, they don't know any of the pastimes. They say, well, that was a really nice painting, but they have no idea what it is. So the knowledge, and really the realized knowledge, you experience everything related to Krishna differently. And because Krishna reveals. So that's how we can know him, when he reveals himself to us. And so that's what this is all about. Atak Shri Krishna Namadi. The holy name, form, qualities, and pastimes of Krishna cannot be grasped by our present material senses. But if we begin serving Krishna, Sevan Mukhe, beginning with the tongue, believe it or not, chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare, and then when you're a little bit tired, tasting prasadam. So those are the two main processes of bhakti that Lord Chaitanya gave. Most of the chanting, huge collective chanting for hours at a time, with the instruments and everything. And then when everyone, this is when he's on tour in South India. He would go alone into a village and he would be chanting and he would be crying and showing ecstasy. And people would be attracted and amazed and they'd join in, and then they would become pure themselves and then people would meet them. And this way it was like a disease, positive disease. But that was it. For the masses, a lot of kirtan and distribution of prasadam. And so that's the easiest process. So that there's no but at the same time, he was so erudite, he would debate, or instruct really, these tremendous leaders of impersonal philosophy in Benares. He was a sannyasi, and generally sannyasis then were Mayavadis, they were impersonalists. But he's dancing in the street, and so, oh, look at, what is this sannyasi? He looks like a sannyasi, but he's so emotional, because they're into just reading the Vedanta Sutra and talking about it, and everything is very cerebral, But there's no bhakti there. So they asked Lord Chaitanya to come and explain what you're doing. So he agreed. And finally, they're telling him about the Vedanta Sutra, and he said, well, you don't really know the essence of the Vedanta Sutra. So he explained it to him, and he saw that the end of Vedanta is bhakti. That's Prabhupada's name, Bhakti Vedanta. You see? It's not merging into Brahman and losing your personality, which is hellish for a devotee. Because for a devotee, he relishes serving Krishna and perceiving Krishna as the person, you see? All of that is absent in the Brahma Jyoti. The impersonalists, the voidists, their whole idea is to somehow get free from birth and death, and the Mayavadis, they want to merge into the Brahman effulgence, the white light. You see, that's the first stage of understanding the absolute truth, this spiritual light. But there's no personality there. There's no activities. That's called nirvishesha, means no details. Everything just homogeneous. I compare it to, I've never been in one of these, but I know that you probably heard of them, the sensory deprivation chambers, where there's water and you can float in it. Maybe it's very salty and the temperature is perfect and it's silent, or some music is playing, and it says, oh. But how long can you stay there? You said, wait a minute, I got to go to work. You can't stay, and you can't stay in the Brahma Jyoti either, because we're spirit souls. Means we're persons. We are spiritual persons. And if we don't have a personal relationship with the absolute truth, then we're uneasy, we're not satisfied. We want to look for that. We'd rather have some material relationship than no relationship. So it's incomplete. There's the Brahman, then there's the super soul realization, Paramatma, and ultimately Bhagavan. Bhagavan is the supreme personality of Godhead, Krishna. And that relationship of service in so many different ways, different rasas, is the ultimate situation for the soul. That's where we came from. That's where we can be eternally happy, completely free from all anxiety. That's what Vaikuntha means. The spiritual world is Vaikuntha, free of all anxiety. Can you imagine? You know, now we're free. We get free of anxiety, but this means we forget about all the things that are, you know, threatening. But at Krishna consciousness, we look at it head on. In the 13th chapter, Krishna will give, like, I think 20 elements of knowledge that we need to have and cultivate. And one of them is Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi Dukkha Doshana Darshana. So always be aware of the reality of birth, old age, disease, and death. And that, as souls, we're going to go again and again and again through that unless we get liberation and go back to the spiritual world. Not just to go to the Brahma Jyoti. That's not going to be, we'll come back from there because it's not satisfying. So Krishna is going to explain here how we can begin to see Krishna, to see God in everything. That's a very important aspect. That's what God consciousness means, Krishna consciousness means. To understand our own divinity, our own divine nature as related to God, and to understand everything else is all connected to Him. Nothing is disconnected. Everything is the Krishna directly or His energy. And we're living in the energy of Krishna. That's part of this chapter. It's very exciting. So the phenomenal and numinous, we learn that that's the material and spiritual. And here, in this verse, Krishna is saying, and it's rare for souls to even try to get perfection. If they understand perfection, it means they get self-realized. Hardly one knows Krishna in truth, because He reserves the right to being invisible, out of sight, until and unless we develop devotion for Him. To that proportion, He will reveal Himself to us. So that's an important lesson here. Any discussion or questions? Okay, get a mic. There's one over here. Is there one over there too? Okay.
Bro.
Hi, Balram.
So here, like hardly one knows me in truth. I was recently hearing Srila Prabhupada's lecture also. Like he was quoting some verses, Bhagavad Gita lectures only. He's saying like one who knows Krishna, Mukta Sangha Param Vrajeta, like Kirta Eva Krishna Se Mukta. Even Prabhupada says that one who knows activities and forms of Krishna, he will be liberated. And so what is this knowing, Prabhu? Like is it like the descriptions of Krishna and his activities is what like makes us free from the material world?
Yeah, well, he explains. You may recall in chapter 4, we get that verse, Janma Karma Chame Divyam.
Yes.
The similar verse, Janma Karma Chame Divyam Evam Yo Vedi Tattvataha Tyaktva Deham Puna Janma Naiti Mameti Soja. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities in truth, O Arjuna, does not come back again. When leaving this body, he comes to me. So that the key word is in truth. Because we can say, yeah, I know, my grandma taught me. Krishna, he danced with the gopis and everything, and he created this world, But that's not good enough, You need to know the details, which we're going to get in this chapter to some degree. What is this world made of? Oh, solid matter, right? Liquids of all kinds, right? Gases, radiant energy, burning the fossil fuels, but it's all radiant energy. And then it gets a little more subtle. The space itself is an element. Ether is called. And then we get to really interesting, but the mind. This is material. But we all have a mind, but we can't see it, we can't taste it, but we know it's there. And then the discriminating factor, called the intelligence. That's the seventh one. And the most subtle of all is that ahankar that I mentioned, this ego, the sense of false ego. And how everything manifests with the false ego interacting with the different modes of nature. It's all in the third canto. It's described in detail in the teachings of Kapila Dev. But the basic point is that behind everything is Krishna. All these are his energies. He lists them in the subsequent verses here. And then he says at the end that these are all my separated energies. You see? So, but beyond these material energies is the spiritual energy, which is us. We're also Krishna's energy, called marginal energy. Tatasta. Why marginal? Because we always, even in the spiritual world, we can turn away from Krishna. We have this freedom, this minute independence. Otherwise, there's no meaning to love. The whole thing works by love up there. you know. And that means that we can choose not to give it at any time. And at that point, we get covered over by the material energy and come down here. So it's not a good idea. We should, so there has to be that freedom, minute independence. Otherwise, Prabhupada famously said, Krishna doesn't want us to love him at the point of a revolver. Love me or else, you know. That's not love. That's servitude. We're going to try to get rid of the servitude. Servitude is not the mood of service. Servitude is slavery. That's what servitude means, right? But
so,
Prabhupada, yeah.
Like now we heard from you about like what Krishna is. Like we're hearing from you in Bhagavad Gita class.
Yeah.
So does it qualify as knowing about him?
That's Gyan.
Okay.
To come to the point of Vigyan, you have to practice it. In other words, you have to, basically chant Hare Krishna. That's our meditation. It works like going out in the sun. You see, the idea is that Krishna is so powerful, he's already there. As soon as we become conscious of him, especially in this age through the chanting of the holy name, the transformation takes place. The purification. It's already there. We already have prema, the most valuable thing in existence, which is love of God. But we can't access it. It's been distorted into things of the material world, which are never, fulfilling. But prema, pure love of God, is limitless, and it's the source of the highest happiness that you can have. It doesn't depend on your age, I mean, I've been doing this for 51 years now. And the Hare Krishna mantra is just as fresh and wonderful as it ever was. I should say more so, And I know that I may have a long way to go, but that it's the one thing that's really worth striving for. I love to quote this verse, if we have time for this. This is one of the verses that is very inspiring, always inspiring in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna says, Labdva sudurlamam idam bahusam bhavante manusham artadam anityam apiha dhira turnam yateta napateda namrityavad nikshe yasaya vishayakalu sarvatakshyat. You have, all of you, human beings, anyone who's listening, after many, many births, you have attained this very rare human form of life. Sudurlabam means very rare. Many births, manushim, the same word, manushim, human being. And what is it? Artadam. It can give you the ultimate goal that we're looking for. Not something relative that's destructible by time, but the ultimate goal, which is revival of our original Krishna consciousness and return to the spiritual world. That's what it can give. But like all forms of life, it's temporary, so you don't waste any time. The next line begins, turnam, immediately, without hesitation. Yateta, strive. We have to strive, because we're so conditioned. Napateta, as long as you haven't died yet, napateta no mrityaya, nikshayasaya, strive for what? The ultimate good, nikshayasa, which is elevation of our consciousness to God consciousness and experiencing love for God and returning back to God and never again to come back here. Because after all, in all those other forms that we went through, we experienced all varieties of sense gratification, which we still find fascinating maybe. But where is it? What has it gotten us? Another birth, another birth, another birth, another birth, you see? In other words, there's no percentage in it. We should strive for that which is really the most valuable thing that can never be. So that's the injunction of, just like tamasi ma jyotir gama, mrityum ma amitam gamaya, asato ma sadgamaya. I learned this even before I heard about Hare Krishna, because I went to a yoga studio. Isn't it like you learn it as a child, right? Anyone who goes. So which was the first? Asato ma? So asato ma sadgamaya. Now it can be thought of in two ways. One is as a prayer to God, please lead me from the temporary to the eternal. Oh Lord, please lead me from death to immortality. Please lead me from darkness, tamaso, to light of pure knowledge. Or the other is, as an injunction, Prabhupada would always say, ma, I mean, don't stay in the temporary world, come to the eternal world. Strive to go to the eternal world of spiritual world, Krishna's world. Don't stay in darkness, come to the light of knowledge. Don't stay in the world of death, come to the eternal world, like that. So it's a good start. If you accept that, Okay, well, what do I do next? Oh, I chant Hare Krishna. That process is so easy and it's feasible for everybody. There's no bar, you know, gender, background. You don't have to be born as a Brahmin, right? Nothing like that. Whoever has any little faith can chant and benefit enormously. Even just a little chanting will protect you from the worst danger, to lose the human form of life. So if you chant a little bit, you'll chant a little bit more in the next life. But why not perfect the chanting and go back to Godhead? All right, it's getting too late. I don't think we have time for a poem. Okay, one simple one, a little motto. Since pleasure is a dream, Krishna supreme, the aim is prem, and the way is the name. All glory. The T-shirt, we made some T-shirts. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Boy, I'm really happy about Taco Tuesday. I don't know how many tacos you had, but thanks for coming. All right, so we'll resume with text 4 tomorrow.